Weekend. I'm Danielle Riendo, and I'm here with my co-host Rob Zachney to wind down another week. This weekend, we're talking about 2016. The year so far has given us a lot to play, read, watch, and think about, and we thought we'd focus on the positives, on sort of our favorite games, and possibly even some of our favorite shows of 2016 so far. So Rob, why don't you take it from there? Why don't you tell me something that has been just one of your absolute favorites so far in 2016?
Well, there's this game called The Witcher. Although I wouldn't be surprised if it comes up on your side, talking about the expansions. But, you know, for me, like, I was sort of looking back, really selfishly, at, like, we're doing this topic, I think, to sort of hold ourselves accountable come, like, December when we're talking about, like, the good games that came out this year. Because, like, you never remember, like, February and March.
First half.
It's straight out. I was sort of looking back through what's come out this year, and it's interesting because I think, for me, a lot of my standouts are strategy games, which isn't a surprise given that, like, you know, you threw it ahead and everything,
yeah.
But it's reassuring to know that, like, you're still all in on the thing you're passionate about, right? Because, like, day to day, it can be easy to lose track of whether or not you're still feeling it as much as you were. But it's nice to sort of hit, like, midway through the year and be like, oh yeah, my favorite games were all the things that they kind of should be, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, I think really the first game that really stood out for me this year and still does is Homeworld Deserts of Karak.
Nice.
Which is just, I think, has actually risen in my estimation, because since that came out, I have seen so many people try to do, like, an RTS on a budget, and just make a complete hash of it. Like, Homeworld Deserts of Karak makes this look easy, but then you compare it to a lot of other RTSs that have either come out or are coming out, and Homeworld, like, clearly stands sort of head and shoulders above them. So, I mean, like, even though I don't think that game has probably gotten the multiplayer community it deserves, you know, on a weekday afternoon or evening, that's a very good time on two hobbies, which suggests maybe sales haven't been great, which gets me a little bit down. But fortunately, it's not a game that really suffers from not being able to play multiplayer, because the campaign is absolutely worth the price of admission. It's still got good characters and fun mission design and a beautiful sense of atmosphere. So really, that, you know, was one of my first experiences of the year, and it remains one of the best. And in the wake of things like Ashes of the Singularity, or I just previewed this game, Meridian Squad 22 for October Shotgun, when you could, like, you see these other games trying to do, like, RTS without the big commitment.
Sure.
And Homeworld just really shows you how it's done, right? If you don't have StarCraft money to make a campaign, Homeworld Deserts of Karak should be the example to follow.
I'm trying to think of a good transition from there, but I don't think I have one, sadly.
No worries.
I want to be like, well, in my homeworld, but that was awful.
That would have been, oh god,
yep.
Hearing that.
See?
Oh.
Aren't you glad I didn't, but I did?
Yeah.
Well, my early part of the year, I've been reflecting on sort of the early part of the year, as you were. And there were a couple of games that really sort of dominated, for me, my sort of, late January and February. And those were Firewatch and The Witness. Now, I'll talk about The Witness first, because I also hated it. But the sheer amount of time I put into that game, I feel like something had to be there for me to get as far as I did in it, and for me to, kind of bust my own butt to keep with it and stay with it. And I think maybe I admire parts of that game more than I actually enjoyed it or liked it. I think that maybe the sort of purity of the puzzle design, at least the puzzles that weren't an absolute nightmare, and I don't mean in terms of difficulty, I mean in terms of, fiddling with the camera to get it to the perfect angle, and things that didn't feel like they were well taught, that stuff continues to bother me. It bothered me when I was playing it. I still think it really is kind of a tarnish on the game. But when the game is being what I think of as 80% of The Witness, being an actually very, very pure sort of puzzle-solving experience, teaching you the sort of language of its gameplay, that's when that game was awesome and had something to teach us and was a just very, very pure experience. And I wanted to mention quickly that a friend of mine actually made a demake of The Witness called wit.nes, and you can just go search for that. It's on itch.io, actually. Just a free little downloadable 8-bit version of The Witness that's just purely puzzles, and it's awesome. None of the sad bullshit statues, none of the weird objectivist kind of shitty worldview, none of the puzzles that make no sense and aren't taught well. It's just good Witness puzzles, and I feel like that's almost the better version.
Are they taken from the game, or are they?
They're sort of inspired by the game. You know, it's just tracing lines. You know, just like you do sort of in the game proper. But it's, you know, it's all very nicely put together and pretty and cute, and you know, just like an even more pure version of that experience. That I think purity is the sort of reason to play it anyway. So that's a cool thing. And the other one that I, you know, played, and actually one of the few games, now that I'm thinking about it, one of the few games I've actually beaten this year. You know, I certainly go in and I beat any game that I'm reviewing, unless I'm doing sort of review impressions, which I always sort of state on there, so no gotchas, please. It was Firewatch, and I feel kind of like a tool, because, you know, I have a friend of mine made wit.nes, and obviously friends of ours, and the producer of this podcast made Firewatch, but I really loved Firewatch, and I know some people had some issues with it, you know, particularly sort of the denouement of the game and the sort of, you know, peak of action, and maybe the sort of core mystery in the game didn't work for them, but I really, really enjoyed it, and more than anything, I enjoyed the writing and the characters, and also being in that space. I'm kind of an outdoor girl. I like to be outside, I like to hike, I like to be in nature, I like to go to national parks. My idea of a perfect vacation is not to go to, you know, a place that has really awesome food. Sorry, Anthony Bourdain, but it is to like go to a national park and hike and bike and kayak and get exhausted and sweaty and disgusting and just enjoy every second of it. That's sort of my idea of heaven. So the idea of sort of like escaping your life into this kind of world, which is exactly what the protagonist does, really kind of resonated with me. You know, I don't have a spouse who's going through early dementia or anything like that, but that aspect of it really, really resonated with me. So, yeah, that's probably going to be on my end of year list as one of my favorite games of the year. Unless, of course, there are 10 other games that blow me away too much more that it would, you know, kind of do that. But I can't really see another game kind of affecting me. I certainly can. I can see another game affecting me personally, but I don't know if anything's going to really scratch that itch, that kind of desire to be outdoors and be in nature to kind of escape personal problems. That feels like something Firewatch did pretty uniquely, so we'll see on that one.
Yeah, when I saw you put that on the list, I sort of reflected on whether I'd just forgotten it, like what I should put on my list or anything like that. And I don't know. It's an odd thing. It's a game that made an impression on me, and I find myself thinking about it at odd times. But for some reason, I guess, like, you know, because I identified with a lot of that as well, sort of the allure of, you know, you're this character it's just become all too much, and does the thing that I think we've all thought about doing at one point or another, which is basically just, you know, to borrow a phrase from my brother and me, pack your bags and get out of town. Just vanish, basically. Just walk out of your life completely, and go be in a place where, like, nobody knows you and nobody can bother you. And that is very appealing. And it is such a beautifully evocative game. Like that really can't be understated, especially as I love how the color palette of the game kind of gets like warmer and then like hotter and more menacing as the game continues. I sort of enjoy that evolution from the forest as like a sort of retreat and place of peace to something a little more, pardon the pun, but like a little more heated, right? A little more panic-inducing. But I do think, like, I am still left with that feeling that I feel like so many things. There's so much good setup in that game that turns out to be misdirection, right? And I think that's kind of my frustration and it's maybe even a little annoying because there are so many different games that it could have been, and Firewatch sort of faints toward a bunch of them. And what it turns out to be is something maybe much more realistic, right? Like, what's that? Like, there's a quote I see sometimes that your life is not a narrative. You're the hero of your own story.
Right.
It's just like it just happens. The life doesn't follow any sort of grand plan or grand narrative design. That's just something we impose onto it. And so I admire that Firewatch kind of commits to this idea that all this stuff happens, and in the end, nothing's really changed for Henry. Unless you feel it has. You know what I mean? Like, that. Yes. It is completely a sequence of events that may or may not have any meaning, but it certainly doesn't have any intrinsic meaning. You're just going to have to ascribe it yourself.
Yeah.
So, I admire that, but at the same time, as I was playing that game, I had the sense of, like, frustration that there's so many ideas and possibilities that kind of go unexplored in this game, and that I'm not sure, like, it's kind of petty, but I'm not sure I ever quite forgave the game for that.
No, I think that's fair enough. I didn't love the sort of central mystery in it. I didn't love that. I sort of recognized its utility in making me never want to drop the controller and making me just plow forward, into the wee hours of the night, so to speak, and never want to stop. And there's utility in that. I get it. You need to keep the player playing the game. I didn't think that held up to sort of scrutiny afterwards.
Which aspect of it?
The sort of conspiracy theory aspect. That part.
So the entire paranoid thriller aspect.
Yeah, that kind of. I didn't hate it when I was playing it. I was fine with it when I was playing it, and sort of later on, I was kind of like, that didn't quite sit 100% with me. But I loved the part of it where things feel unresolved, and I loved the part where it was like, no, fuck you, you're not getting your romance novel ending kind of thing. I loved the last 5 minutes of that game. I felt were perfect, at least in my opinion. For me, for the sort of thing I was playing along in my head, and I liked how that recontextualized the whole thing of thinking like, oh, we're leading up to something. Nope. Go back to your life, dude, because the answers aren't in the woods. I just love that. I love that slap in the face. Maybe I'm a masochistic person, but I thought that was great,
Yeah, and I think I probably need to play it again, right? Because my first, clearly as I talked about it, my impressions are completely informed by the fact I had no idea where it was headed.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I started building out versions of the game in my head that weren't the game I was playing.
Yeah.
And so I'm still sort of caught on that disillusionment, I guess. But as I talk about it, I'm like, oh shit, that's kind of, there's a lot that I admire about this approach to storytelling.
Yeah.
I just maybe need to go back and accept, for instance, I need to go back and appreciate the comedy of the scene where where they uncovered the mysterious scientific research station that appears to be spying on them. A scene that in retrospect becomes pretty hilarious.
Yeah.
So I think Firewatch definitely will be worth discussing again at the end of this year, if only to sort of compare, because obviously good things have to be pitted against each other in a good thing deathmatch.
Yes.
At the end of the year.
Oh yes.
I'm very sorry, but there's only so much goodness we can recognize in December, and everything else can just sit and spin.
It has been decreed.
So I think games that have really jumped out at me of late. So yeah, I think I have to give a nod to Total War Warhammer.
All right.
Even though, like, it's interesting because I still feel that there's like half of an amazing game there, and then it kind of trails off. Like, I really feel like that campaign, no matter who you're playing, I think kind of forgets what makes the opening appealing. And eventually it becomes this really sort of procedural road kind of slog. And I have tended to lose interest in campaigns when that starts to happen. But those early stages, when you are in this like Warhammer world, and you are just fighting for your life against all of these really, really like well-presented like Warhammer fantasy enemies, really makes it all feel like it's come to life. You know, I was going through. It's always a cool thing, right? To go through, like, as you're sort of winding down a game, like review process or whatever. You sort of go through your screenshots folder and just start leafing through it. It's almost like going through your old snapshots.
Totally.
Right? You're not gonna keep everything, but you know, I was going through the folder and I was seeing all these like amazing images of like. You know, human cavalry charging at the like legs of a huge ogre, for instance, and like the next frame shows like a horseman being just like blasted like a fastball out of right field, almost. Just that ogre hammering something.
Yeah.
Or like just like, you know, battles and driving snowstorms in the mountains with like all the, you know, the dwarven city in the background, like huge carved mountainside and sculptures. Everything just feels so good in that game. That's not an easy thing, I think, especially for strategy games to do. A lot of them can sometimes feel like you're just dealing with piles, like you're just dealing with like skins wrapped around piles of numbers.
Sure, yeah.
And this doesn't fall into that trap. This is a game that's like really going out of its way to sort of convince you that like, no, this is absolutely like this epic fantasy battle with these like crazy magical creatures that are completely like mismatched and unbalanced, but somehow you're gonna have to make it work, right? Like somehow your little crossbowmen are gonna have to, you know, gonna have to pucker up and face down this giant spider, and you know, we'll see how it goes. And so I really like, even though I have some big problems with how that ends up playing out as a strategy game in the long haul. In terms of like the memories it generates and how many like sort of white knuckle nail biter battles it sort of generates, Total War Warhammer it remains one of my favorite strategy experiences of this year, and probably one of my favorite Total Warhammer. One of my favorite Total War experiences. In quite some time. I'm not sure if it tops the excellent Attila, but it's definitely something that I'll want to revisit at the end of the year, think about how it holds up and how it's evolved as a strategy.
One of these days I'm going to have you sit me down and give me a little lesson in strategy games, because I feel like some part of me is primed to actually get strategy, but I don't play very many of the games. And
you play Rise of Nations, right?
Oh, a ton, yeah. I mean, it's like the one that I've played, honestly. Like, it's like the one strategy game that I've played ever.
Yeah, but it's also like one of them I feel like if you played that, you probably get it. It's just a matter of like finding the time for them, right?
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, no, absolutely happy to evangelize some of these to you.
One of these days, we're gonna make that happen. Should do that on a stream or something, but yeah. Here's my biggest surprise of the year so far has been, so the next sort of, you know, couple of games on the list, I'll kind of talk about one of them very briefly and then you know, kind of tie it in, but they're first-person shooters, and this is funny to me because I am maybe the world's worst first-person shooter player. Like, you should see me aim. It's horrific. It's sad. It's truly sad. I just don't play a ton of FPSs, not seriously, pretty much never competitively. I really enjoyed Superhot this year. I know the game is so short that it was almost kind of a teaser for more things that they're going to do with Superhot, so I kind of am excited for what else they're going to do with that game. I know they're going to do some VR stuff, they're going to do other things with that game, so I kind of put that on my list as like hey, that was really cool. It's a really cool concept, the sort of time bending, it actually feels kind of like a puzzle, and it feels very much like an actual, like a real innovation on a core kind of game design paradigm that, is in many games, clearly, but it really felt like, okay, this is actually thinking about what makes this stuff tick and what makes it work, and it was really fun. Love the style, love the kind of cyberpunk fun story. But yeah, the sort of main two games that are sort of left on my list are Overwatch and Doom. Two first-person shooters that have come out, fairly recently, that I utterly adored. Like, really had no desire to play them whatsoever, either of them, honestly. I thought Overwatch looked cute, but I was like, oh, it's a Blizzard game, it's a, first-person shooter, there's MOBA stuff in there, and I know, neither of those are my genre, neither of those are the things that I get excited about, and here I am, months later, still playing it, still loving it, still kind of sucking at it, but not even caring, because it's just so goddamn fun, and we've probably talked that to death, so I won't go too far into it, other than to say it's just a really warm and kind of inclusive and fun and colorful team-based game that is just a real pleasure to play.
Have you found the type of thing you do in the game has changed? Are you playing more roles now that you've had more time in the game, or are you still pretty support-focused?
I'm still rocking Zarya pretty hard. Okay. And she's kind of the only one I'm not garbage with. So I'm leaning in to that a little bit. But I still mess around every now and then. I feel like I've had some fun with Lucio. I've had a little bit of luck with him. And hilariously, I've been playing a little bit of McCree. Just because I don't know. Occasionally, I have fun just shooting things poorly. So there's that.
So like every time that ultimate is up, I just like. It's like that Far Side cartoon with the dude with the symbols.
Oh, yeah.
Being like, don't screw up, don't screw up, don't screw up. The caption is like, Sydney screws up.
Yeah.
That's me with McCree. Like, every time that ultimate is about to be up, I'm like, okay, don't fuck this up. Just step out there. Like, take a good scan. Don't panic. Don't move too slow. Don't move too fast. And just let those locks get acquired.
It's like Alien Isolation, almost. Like.
Yeah, and every time it's just like I step out, immediately freak out, maybe lock out, maybe see like one person, like, and that's it basically. Like I completely whiff.
Yeah, it's all that. No, I understand. I'm not good with McCree, believe me. I'm no good at all. But it's fun every now and then to be Mr. Goofy Cowboy.
Yeah.
Which is honestly the reason I play that game. You get to be these goofy, funky little characters, and it's fun. Like I don't care that I suck so bad at the game, as long as nobody else on my team is gonna hate me for life, which they won't because I'm not playing in any kind of competitive capacity, really. As long as I'm just sort of going in and having fun and relaxing, it's kind of all good. It's kind of my go-to for something to play when I just need to kind of chill right now, which is a good thing I have, and of course there's Doom, which surprised the hell out of me. And again, we've talked about this, so much. So I will only briefly say I just love that game for how comfortable it is in its own skin, being a goofy, weird video game, proud to be it, and a shooter that I can play as basically first-person melee, which I'm a lot better at. And just enjoy myself and be wacky and kill demons in the face, and it's just a great time. It's just a simple, fun, goofy kind of good time, and I'm still just totally down for that.
In a weird way, I feel like with both Superhot and Doom do to an extent is that they almost seem to like deconstruct shooters a little bit.
Totally.
Because, like, I think Doom actually also has a sort of stop-start pacing to it that is kind of unusual because of all those melee kills. that sort of force the action to slow down. You sort of get to pump the brakes on the action every few seconds in a big battle, and I think that ends up being like actually a little more comfortable than like older shooters where you constantly have to just be running and gunning and like sort of spinning in circles and the skill shots. But the other thing is it sort of lets you enjoy the action of a shooter a little more, right? Because you're playing, like, I feel like they're like mindful shooters, almost. You're like, you're a little more conscious of what you're doing and a little more conscious of like how you're moving through a level and what your routes are. And that's all stuff that like maybe happens intuitively in other shooters. But if it's happening intuitively, sometimes that can feel really good because it sort of, it just feels like all effortless and like very flowy. But sometimes it also just it sort of denies you the pleasure of appreciating your own skill. Right?
Yeah.
And I feel Doom is very good at letting you sort of congratulate yourself on your cleverness for like, wow, I really got out of that corner and killed the crap out of these guys.
Yes.
So I really admire what Doom sort of does with the genre. Speaking of conventions of genre. I am probably a little premature on this because I haven't played too much of it yet. But I am shocked how much I'm enjoying Uncharted 4.
Yes.
It is not surprising in a lot of ways, but it is serving me up exactly what I've come to expect and hope for from Naughty Dog games, which is just some of the best writing, best acting, and best like thought out like set pieces that I'll find in a game.
Yeah, that game is fantastic. I've been playing it kind of on and off myself, and God, I just love that it's the most beautiful damn kind of Tomb Raider-y game ever, and I'm having so much fun. You know, the story is great. It's awesome. The acting is and the pacing and the writing, as you're saying, are very mature, and they feel like a movie made for grown-ups, which is not always something you get in games, but I'm playing this kind of like a kid. Like, I'm like, oh, I can climb on that thing. I can run over there. I can kind of do all this stuff. Like, I'm actually having fun sort of treating it like a really pretty playground, and I like that the game supports that as well.
Yeah, I did, I am surprised how much I have been cool with the fact that kind of retcon a Drake brother.
Oh, yeah.
Story as well. I was okay, so I think part of it is I'm also just really relieved that this isn't a disaster.
Yeah, totally.
Because I was very worried that losing Amy Hennig.
Yeah.
Is it Hennig or Hennig?
I think it's
Hennig, right?
Yeah, I think it's Hennig. I think you have it.
I was very concerned that the departure of Amy Hennig would kind of spell doom for Uncharted for me, right? Because, like, I think one of the things that sort of distinguished that series very early on was A, quality of writing, and B, the fact that, like, you had strong female characters.
Yeah.
That weren't just there as, like, romantic objects. And I would say especially as the series went on, they sort of grew beyond that. I will say that I think Uncharted 4 is recognizably a Druckmann story.
Sure.
And in weird ways is actually a little bit of a companion to Last of Us.
I can see that.
Because I feel like there's a lot of... Both those games actually have a lot of, like, white working class or middle class anxieties sort of baked into them. And I think, like... Because I mean, that's totally the setup for Uncharted 4, right?
Oh,
like,
totally.
Ostensibly, the action is like, oh man, your brother's come back, and he's got some bad stuff in his past that's catching up to him, and you gotta help him. But really, the crisis for Nathan Drake, right, is that he's living that life of quiet desperation.
Yeah,
it's a weird thing because it is making a character that was a complete like matinee type character, like just an adventure hero. Suddenly, like, you're taking that fish out of water and locating it in the real world. But I think that's actually done to really good effect. in this game. I'm surprised how much I'm liking it, right? Because I didn't need another story where Nathan Drake was just kind of wisecracking, like flipping his way around the world. I really like that it sort of opens with like this guy who we've seen doing all this cool shit for these other games is suddenly just like working on a salvage crew and just like getting yelled at by yelled at by the police, like, get your crew out of here. We gotta move.
Yeah.
He's getting underbid on shitty contracts. I am surprised how much I'm enjoying having the characters of like Drake and Elena sort of brought down to earth.
Yeah, that game was awesome. I need to finish it myself still at this point, but yeah, I agree completely. I'm gonna just make one quick mention of a game I have not played yet, but I think it could be potentially on my list, and that is Hyper Light Drifter. It just sort of came out at a time where there were like 3 Dark Souls likes, basically, and it's not any Dark Souls game at all, but it does sort of take that a little bit of that inspiration of it's really hard and the bosses are really tough, and but unlike Dark Souls, there's no kind of huge loading time in between, and you kind of get to jump right back in. It's a game that I have not yet played, even though by virtue of my position, I have watched like 20 hours of footage from it because I've, cut those, boss guides and things like that from it. So I feel confident in saying I think I would like this game to the point even where I might like it enough for it to be on my list. So it has a sort of temporary spot right now. It's kind of the grayed out version on my spot right now, but I do think it might be there. It might be one of those.
Any games you're surprised didn't make your list?
I thought about putting Dark Souls on there because of again, by virtue of just how much damn time I spent. I was obviously, we've been over it a few times, but I liked it despite how much I hated it.
That's the thing. I'm so surprised it didn't make the list. Yeah. Because, you hate fuck something for months at a time on the reg, and, sorry, that's a relationship.
It is a relationship. It's a relationship where, are you calling them when you're a little drunk on Saturday night? Are you saying, hey? Or are you like, fuck that game?
Yeah.
It's weird. I'm thinking about it right now, and I'm kind of like, I'm glad I played what I played, 57 hours, or maybe even more like 60 hours. I'm glad I had that experience, but I do not want to see it again. It's one of those. With Bloodborne, I definitely would see it again. If Bloodborne were coming to town, we would have drinks, we would have coffee, we would talk, at least. Right. We might end up getting a hotel. That's fine. Yeah. Maybe, for one night. Dark Souls, I'm kind of like...
New phone.
I don't know. Yeah. New phone, who dis? That might be what happens with it. And I just think that comes down to Bloodborne being a little bit more... I guess you could say accessible, but maybe just a little bit more my style. A little bit more... it rewards aggression. What's that? Sorry?
But Witness did make your list.
Yeah, it did. Witness and I would have coffee and then go to the bathroom. I know, I have a real problem. I have a real Witness problem. I think it's probably obvious.
That's not great.
I know.
But I guess, sure.
Yep. I love how I've contextualized this in a really special way here.
Yeah, and I'm guessing, I guess the next question is what kind of place are you at with the Witness? What kind of bathroom were we talking about, right?
It's a nice restaurant, at the very least. There's a candle in that bathroom. Okay, we're not talking about Burger King. Right.
Yeah,
There's a candle.
Just bracing yourself on a shaky,
it's you might die, if you make the wrong choices there. Yeah, no, we would go to the bathroom and then I would slap it in the face after. It's more tumultuous. Dark Souls, I'm still kind of I don't know. I'm not here. I went to New York. I live in New York, but you know what I mean. I went into Manhattan. I'm not here. I don't know where you are.
I think for me, a game that I'm surprised didn't click with me more, though I shouldn't be surprised at all. I was really hoping I would fall in love with Stellaris. Oh shit. No, forget that. XCOM 2 is the game I'm surprised with.
Yes, that came out this year. Shit, that's right.
Yeah. XCOM 2, I think I need to give it another shot.
Sure.
I know that people who are really good at squad tactics games, who I respect, like, put their time into it and figure, like, as my buddy Sean Sands put it, because he did a 180 on that game. He didn't like it, and then he fell in love with it. And I asked him, like, you know, how could you leave me like this? Like, leave me alone and not liking XCOM 2 very much. And he was like, I was right where you're at, but then XCOM 2 whispered its secrets to me. And I was lost. And I kind of hope to go back and have that moment, right? I kind of want, I want to give that game one more chance to seduce me.
Yeah.
And sort of, you know, whisper sweet nothings into my ear. But I am surprised how much that game wasn't what I wanted out of an XCOM sequel.
Sure.
Really, I wanted a better, like, more coherent campaign. And I feel like they made a tougher tactics game, which isn't a bad thing. And, like, again, random levels was a huge addition. But I feel like they both kind of jacked up the difficulty curve of the overall campaign.
Yeah.
And then at the same time created a campaign whose structure doesn't really make a lot of like intuitive sense at first glance, nor does it actually make a lot of sense if you think about it after you figure out how it works.
Sure.
It still doesn't really work on either level, I don't think. So that I think is probably my biggest surprise of this year, is just that XCOM 2, a game that I had been so up for years, since the first game came out, ended up being one of my surprising misses of the year.
It's always weird when that happens. Yeah. I seriously, when you mentioned that, I was like, oh god, that game came out this year. I remember editing a review for it and never hearing another word about it again, and kind of being like, oh, yeah, I guess
I'll tell you, I started to feel a lot better, because that was one of the first, there were a lot of people who were not happy after we went through head on it.
Sure.
It's not a positive episode in a lot of ways. But I kind of felt a little bit gratified at how quickly, like, people who would profess to, like, completely be head over heels with that game kind of stopped talking about it. Mm-hmm. Like, and maybe that's, like, churlish, because most people are in our line of work, right? We all move on to things. We all, like, play a thing and then move on.
Yeah.
But I definitely felt like, the original, like, not the original XCOM, but I hate the way we talk about it.
I know.
XCOM Enemy Unknown from a few years ago. That was a thing that was talked about throughout that year and the next, really. Like, that just became, like, the go-to reference for, like, squad tactics, turn-based games. That was just, everyone was into that. Everyone had lots to say. Everyone was still, like, high on it months and months later. Here, it was a very short honeymoon period, and then I kind of feel like within a few weeks you saw how much it had really clicked with people, as opposed to how much people, like, read their expectations into their first reaction.
Yeah. God, there's so much of that in our industry, too. So,
yeah.
It's kind of a common problem. Yeah. So, Rob, I wanted to briefly ask you, since we're doing kind of our favorites of the year so far, other than The Americans, did you have a favorite TV series so far in 2016?
I did.
Yeah.
The show I would cite for the thing that gave me the most enjoyment was American Crime Story, The Trial of O.J. Simpson.
Fantastic.
That was every episode was just an absolute treat to me, and I loved how it was kind of everything a miniseries should be. It almost felt like like how, if you ever watch, like, Band of Brothers, a lot of the episodes actually have a very different style to them. They focus on very different things. This was kind of similar in that, while the through line of the trial was sort of gave the thing its structure, there were a lot of times where the perspective really shifted to one character or another, or one group of people, or one issue. And I really enjoyed just how it turned into this, it gave me this feeling of looking at the same events from all these different perspectives. The episode that really jumped out at me, actually, if I had to cite, there's two episodes I would cite as being truly, truly spectacular. One was an episode called Marsha, which was as you might expect, just a study of Marcia Clark and what it was like to be a smart, ambitious, promising district attorney and finding yourself at the center of this, like, complete media shitstorm.
Oh, God, yeah.
And that was kind of a heartbreaking episode. Sort of covered her, like, sense of isolation and anger and sexism directed there. So that was a great episode. And then another episode that stood out was called A Jury in Jail, which was really just about the jurors of the O.J. Simpson trial. All 30 or 40 of them. And what it was like being in this weird sequestration for like 6 months, and the racial and personal tensions within that jury, and the way they sort of were looking at the same events. It was a complete departure from the rest of the series in a lot of ways, because you were basically the show about the extras. But it was a great episode of television, and I really enjoyed the series as a whole.
I can't wait to actually dive in. My girlfriend and I are watching Scream right now, hilariously, and I'm kind of like, all right, the next one has to be serious. We're watching the OJ show after this, and it's one of those. For my part, I think The Expanse has to be my favorite.
The Expanse.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, it's partially 2015. It was December 2015 into February. Yeah, I mean, but it counts because it goes into February of this year. And God, it's been so long since, a sci-fi show. I will probably watch most sci-fi, even if it's utter trash, because sci-fi is just my thing. It's what I love. I love the idea of, sort of wider possibilities and space and dorky shit. But this is one of those sort of very few sci-fi series that's really, really good, really well written with great characters and a point, and a lot of, just a lot of sort of meat on the bone, so to speak. You can appreciate it completely from just, it's an enjoyable, exciting series in space. It also, has a diverse cast, which is awesome, and it sort of, says some things about a potential future, and actually says some things about, terrorism versus revolutionaries, and there's Mormons in space, and there's a lot going on. And we've dug into it, sort of in the past, but as with anything, whenever I kind of have dreams about something, I know it really took into my brain, so to speak. And I have a lot of the Americans' dreams, but of course we exempted the Americans because both of us were going to say the Americans.
But you're having Expanse dreams as well.
I'm having Expanse dreams as well, and I just find myself thinking about it every now and then.
Oh, yeah.
I
watched every episode at least twice.
Oh, yeah.
It was like, I'd wait a few weeks. I didn't delete anything because I was like, I was so starved for decent sci-fi.
Yes.
That I was like, in 3 weeks you're gonna want to watch that episode. So just hold your horses.
Just keep it in there.
And I mean, I think it got better as it went on. The fast ramp up it does toward the end of the season, when all the plot lines begin to converge at this one asteroid space station, was really, really good. There is some great tension building, calm before the storm shootout moments in these closing episodes. I am so excited for the next season, and really they just knocked it out of the park with production, direction, and casting.
Yeah, God, so good. All right, so that's probably about all the halfway point of 2016 that we're going to do today. So then I think it's time for us to handle our weekend correspondence. But first, a word from our sponsor. Rob, now that it's summer, I want to take a little road trip. I definitely have always wanted to see the great California coast. But I have a little problem. I think hitchhiking might not be the safest thing.
Well, if the movie Zodiac has taught me anything about being out in the wilds of California, no, it's absolutely not. And remember, Ted Cruz is still out there.
God, you're right. They have not built any bullet trains yet, much to my chagrin. And I definitely don't want to buy a car. I don't have the money for that.
Well, you could always try Zipcar. They're convenient, easy to find and use, and flexible. And they have wheels when you need them in most cities.
Okay, Okay, well that sounds pretty great.
Just go to joinzipcar.com/weekend and you'll get $25 of free driving credit. And you can have a car whenever you need one without any of the hassle.
I can avoid scary drivers, Ted Cruz, and the Zodiac Killer all summer long. What's that URL again?
That's joinzipcar.com/weekend for $25 of free driving credit.
Alrighty, so I think it's time for us to reach into our mailbag. Our first question comes from Alex in Los Angeles. Alex writes, yeah, hi guys. As a lifelong gamer in my early 30s, recent releases of Doom and Overwatch have made me really happy. I feel like these two titles in particular have gotten to the core of what makes first-person shooters fun. This isn't nostalgia talking. Doom 2 has been a favorite of mine for as long as I can remember, and I think it's because it was a simple game designed around a new idea, a fast first-person shooter, and the design is focused on exploiting the core of that to make it fun. I don't mean to say that games since then have been bad or that developers haven't been working hard to create the best games they can. There's been a lot of ground to explore, with AAA titles pushing the boundaries of what is possible and indies focused on very specific gameplay elements. And now we've got games like the new Doom. It's a AAA game that is fully aware that it's built around core gameplay and is improved with everything we've learned about quality of life and polish. Feels like these things are finally coming together, and I'm just so gosh darn happy. Alex in Los Angeles. I feel like I've already covered how I feel about these two games sort of in our first segment, which is funny. Sort of like, oh yeah, this letter is somebody who totally gets it too. But yeah, just Alex gets it. The Doom makers get it. Overwatch creators get it, and it's awesome to see when people get it.
I think there's a hypothesis of progress in this email that I'm not entirely down with, or at least I'm not entirely convinced by. Right? Like, I hope Alex is right. I hope that this is like developers are like they've had a good thing. And they've really figured out how to make really good games around, like, simpler, like, older ideas. I feel like we've seen two examples, like, maybe just one example of that. Like, I'm actually not sure Overwatch, really does. I'm not sure Overwatch is as simple as it appears, right? Like, I think the idea of Overwatch is kind of simple. I think the execution is maybe a lot less simple. And I think when we talked about Doom, it's also a surprisingly complicated game in some ways. But I think like it's these are sort of two data points, and I think we've been very lucky to have two games like that emerge this year. I'm not sure as a whole that like the AAA market is getting better at making games. I feel like we just had a few come up that are really a few that have come up that are really good, but good in a way that makes us feel like they're recapturing what made games great in the first place. Sure. Which is awesome, and like I share that enthusiasm. And this is me. I'm a total pessimist. Like I'm always like, I'm always like, boy, today's a really nice day. And then I will scan the horizon, like trying to find that, that dark cloud coming in. And so with this, I kind of feel like I hope this reflects like improving creative direction and execution of game design AAA studios. I suspect we're just having a really good spring and early summer.
I appreciate that. I sort of, maybe I read a little too much into Alex's email of my own perspective, which is that the developers are sort of embracing fun and embracing, like, joyful goofiness and colorfulness and things like that as well. Like, that kind of comes along with, the older design ethos of the older Doom and elder games, basically. And I'm really hoping that's a trend, that we're done with the sort of grimdark, serious men shoot serious men kind of stuff. We're not done, but at least that we've taken a turn in the industry, kind of more away from that and more into like, what's fun is shooting a demon. What's fun is being colorful and having pink hair and shooting people. That kind of thing. But I fully also acknowledge that, hey, maybe we just got lucky. Maybe you're right. Yeah. So
I'll be really curious to see what we continue to see out of the non-Fallout, Elder Scrolls, Bethesda properties.
Yes.
Because I do feel like they're on a weird roll right now. and like, okay, it's only, again, limited data points, right? We're talking about like 2 games,
Sure.
basically. Like, boy, those old id properties they've arrived have been really good.
They've been great.
But I am kind of...
Well, there's also Dishonored, which, you know, we're seeing the new Dishonored. It's going to be out this fall. So that's...
Oh, man.
You can add that, I guess. I mean, it's not old, clearly. It's not an older game, but
it's
still a cool property. It is an heir to thief. You know, that makes sense.
Yeah, like, it's not old, but at the same time, like, boy, is it
boy, is it thief.
Like, not,
yeah.
It's definitely not, like, shy in its, like, shout-outs to old-looking glass games.
Yeah.
Okay, so our next email is anonymous. Hi, Weekenders. I've lived in a bunch of countries, and as a side effect of growing up under sanctions, I never saw games advertised outside extremely limited and local enthusiast press, which was largely cut off the global stream. Work frequently sends me to San Francisco, Los Angeles, from Europe. The sales and commercial wash that E3, GDC, and the culture in general has leaves me running back to my hotel room and getting some silence. Also, my enjoyment of games is washed in the pushed perception of it, which means exposure puts me off of titles. Do you ever see this, or is this just my outsider's view?
I think you're certainly not alone in that view. I guess, I'm an overly enthusiastic person who is guilty of you know, going a little bananas and jumping up and down and getting excited about stuff. But it wears on me as well. You know, the sort of hype cycle is very, very exhausting. I mean, especially if you work in it. You know, I think I'm very, very, very lucky to do the job that I do. But it can be a little exhausting at times, just being like, okay, well, it's hype time, get on the hype train. You know, let's see the 10 commercials. Let's overanalyze the 5 trailers. Let's talk about the data points of how many guns are in X, Y, and Z. And it's, you know, we've, thank God, kind of turned the corner from the how many guns are in X, Y, and Z sort of stuff that, you know, a few years ago that was what you did. If you were a game journalist, you wrote up those press releases. That was a thing. It's a little less focused on that now, but no less focused on sort of the hype train and you know, having to get excited about you know, certain games and having to sort of join the conversation about certain games, even if you kind of want to talk about other stuff. That's why it's nice to have a podcast. But yeah, I don't think you're alone at all in that. I think a lot of people get very overwhelmed, especially if you do go to events. It's truly exhausting. You know, I can run 15 miles up mountains and be fine, but I am ready to die after like 3 hours on a show floor. It's just overstimulating and tiring and loud and truly exhausting. So, yeah, I think you're right about that. I mean, and certainly there is quite a bit in our culture, in gaming culture, and in wider American culture, that has to do with the hype cycle and sort of getting excited about things and getting really, really excited about commercial products to the point where part of your identity gets wrapped up in a commercial product. So, yeah, that's certainly a perspective that's useful as well.
I think sometimes I lose sight of the degree to which our society or our culture is built on advertising.
Sure.
Because like reading this email, I got thinking about like, I mean, I have a similar reaction at times, but I think that's mostly just like a combination of physical exhaustion and like noise exhaustion, fatigue from just being in the cacophonous, like you know, reception halls and exhibition halls and that sort of thing. I fundamentally can kind of really enjoy a good hyped up, ridiculous marketing experience, right? Like, I freaking loved watching like that Sony press conference.
Sure.
Like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
That was just an absolute blast. But like reading this email, I got to thinking about like, I can't imagine how quieting and like liberating it would be to live in a place where every single public surface isn't covered in advertising.
Yeah, it's almost like, unfathomable to us.
No, just imagine living in a city where you can look down the street and you just see buildings and architecture and people and not like signs and not like and that like interests me as well because like to an extent like advertising is you know is kind of a form of propaganda as well, right? It's this propaganda that we submit ourselves to. We are a society that sort of self-propagandize. We create our ideal life in these images, in these ads, and then we sort of give ourselves permission to chase it on some level, sort of craft our identity around that ideal. And the thought of growing up in a landscape that's kind of devoid of that, or at least severely curtails that, is very mysterious, but also very enticing to me.
Sure.
Because I definitely feel like at times we have, we all sort of smirk, right, about how in certain East Bloc countries, right, there'd be radios you couldn't turn off or something, or everyone would have to assemble to listen to the premier's speech or something, how sad to not live in a free society and have to go through all this rigmarole. But at the same time, we do live in a society where we absolutely can't actually get silence. We can't actually escape mass market, agitprop messages.
Totally.
Ours are just different flavor.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, we talked about this earlier in the episode, but that's exactly the sort of thing that drives me to want to, on bad days, just be like, well, fuck all this, I'm gonna go be an EMT in Yosemite National Park and just go deal with people and their broken legs, and I can't deal with living in the modern world right now, goodbye. It's a very real fantasy for me sometimes. So, Firewatch, that's why it all worked. And, couldn't agree more. Our last email comes to us from Kyle. Kyle writes, in a recent episode, Danielle mentioned about how escapist entertainment could be a crutch for engaging with the world around you. This got me thinking about how games could be emotional crutches versus emotional help. I just finished my second year of college, but one of my best friends just graduated. In the weeks before the end of the year, she got really into Assassin's Creed Syndicate, and I ended up watching her play a large portion of the game. I really enjoyed just spending time with her and us remarking on Syndicate, and then she graduated. I was really missing her and decided to go back to my own copy of Syndicate as a way of feeling closer to her in those memories. I played through some of it earlier in the year, but the story didn't grab me, and a lot of the mindless side quests turned me off because of how time-wasty they felt. But now everything felt imbued with meaning. Every little quest and interaction both reminded me of my friend, but also numbed my feelings of sadness and missing her. From a detached perspective, Syndicate's quests are pretty poorly designed in my opinion, and all the side quests feel the same. But I played hours of that game in the past few weeks regardless. I can't tell if it helped me cope, if it was emotionally healthy, or if it was just numbing. Have either of you had experiences like this? Do you think using games like this is emotionally hindering or helpful? Are there any games that took on new importance because of the people in your lives? Wow, there's a lot there. This email really kind of hit me in a place where I live because, yes, I often will use games as sort of a way of coping with a difficult time in my life. And also, I used to get very depressed at the very end of every year in college. I just went through a super, super bad depression every single year. And I had sort of a miniature version of that at the end of every fall semester, but it was never as bad. Just the end of the year, like springtime, I would just get so sad and feel so kind of hopeless, which, sounds a little weird, but I guess it was sort of myself figuring out my psychology. Like, I just need to be real busy, and times where I feel like things are ending and I won't be busy are bad for me. So there you go. Maybe some of that could be helpful for you, Kyle. Having things can be a very, very good thing, and I don't think it's a bad thing to use games as a way of helping you through a difficult time. Missing your friend, I think that's a perfectly reasonable thing to kind of go back and play something that gives you some comfort. I think what I've struggled with and what I was talking about in that episode was more when you sort of cross the line into, I'm doing this instead of X, Y, and Z that I would otherwise enjoy and would feel healthy. Like if you couldn't ever stop playing and you felt like you would just die if you stopped playing. Something like that, I think, is where things kind of cross from something that's a coping mechanism, something that's helpful for you and healthy for you, into something that becomes an obsession, or it becomes kind of a complete crutch. And I think for everybody, that line is going to be a little different for everybody, and you kind of figure this stuff out as you grow up, and, if you have any mental health issues, if you talk to a therapist or you talk to a professional about them, they can kind of help you find where that line is, potentially. But, yeah, I think that line kind of exists for everybody. I remember there were a few games that I've used in like really, really tough times. I went through a breakup when I was 16, and I didn't sleep for more than like an hour for 2 weeks. And I played a lot of Perfect Dark in that time, the original Perfect Dark on the Nintendo 64, and really loved it. And man, I have some weird associations with that game because of that. I was hallucinating because I wasn't sleeping, and it was bad. It was really bad. I was a very heartbroken little baby Danielle, and yep, it helped me. It really helped me kind of like at least have something to put my brain into and do things, and it was a thing that I could do. It was like a helping hand, sort of in that time of need. I have a few more, but sorry, I feel like I'm rambling. Please, Rob, your thoughts. Yeah.
You know, to me, I'm reading this, and what it, I guess, sort of catches my eyes that the specialness, the magic of this game has kind of been lost in the absence of this person. And I think I have two reactions to this, right? Like, on the one hand, sometimes that makes absences feel worse, because it's like you realize like those things you enjoyed together aren't you can't enjoy them the same, you can't enjoy them the same way, and it sort of makes that it feeds that whole like the food doesn't taste as good, the colors aren't as bright and all that. On the other hand, I'm like, having had that experience, but then being on the other side of a lot of absences, and looking at them with a little more distance, I increasingly regard that feeling sometimes as a little bit healthy. Because something that will happen a lot is you'll return to something, and you will realize that it doesn't feel special anymore. And it's not as magical, or maybe it isn't as good as it seemed, or not as deep, or perceptive, or exciting. And in a weird, shitty way, that's also maybe a way of coming to terms with someone else's absence.
Sure.
Because I think sometimes that helps you, it sort of brings you back down to earth.
It makes it real in some ways, maybe.
Yeah, like, because I think those are moments that can kind of pierce the rose-tinted glasses, right? That, at first you're like, oh, this isn't special about this person, the moment's been lost, the magic's been lost, it's not as good as it was. With more time and distance, sometimes you also start realizing that maybe the entire memory is a little more suspect than you thought. Right? And that's, and that sounds really shitty and like cruel, right? Because it's a way of like shrinking someone's role in your life, or the mental real estate devoted to them. But it's kind of healthy at the same time, right? That you start to realize, like, oh man, like, the games we played together weren't as good as I thought. The movies we liked, were kind of shittier than I thought. The music we were listening to those years wasn't quite as good, doesn't hold up. And maybe if I was wrong about that shit, what else was I wrong about? And actually, that can be very helpful. That can be a very helpful question to ask, depending on the nature of the loss, right? But in general, I think this is something that has gone through a number of levels, and I think both perspectives are valid. And unfortunately, I think also inevitably you will encounter both perspectives. It's a matter of where you're at. But I always return to a quote near the end of Strange Days, when one character turns to the other and says, memories are supposed to fade, and the whole movie is kind of about the perils of hanging on to ones to the point where they become dangerous. And I'm sort of at peace now with that, with the process of the fade.
Yeah, it's a very Buddhist view. I dig that. That's good stuff. All right, so that's it for our weekend correspondence. Let us now move into weekend projects. Rob, are you watching, reading, listening to anything especially special right now?
So I just read a pretty fun book that I guess I would call like Arab Witcher or something like that.
Sure.
It was a book called Throne of the Crescent Moon by Saladin Ahmed.
Okay.
I'm mostly familiar with Ahmed's work via Twitter. Actually, he's become sort of a Twitter celebrity, commenting on matters of writing and sci-fi and Islam and Islamophobia.
Nice.
But Throne of the Crescent Moon is actually just a really good genre fantasy story. But the difference is it is informed by Middle Eastern culture and Middle Eastern storytelling traditions, and not so much like Tolkien, for instance. So the entire thing is it's sort of like imagine a fat old Geralt, sort of on one last mission, and that's kind of where it departs from. But it's really, really cool because it is very, very Witcher. It's all to an extent a monster hunting procedural.
Nice.
But
yeah.